Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's CRPOA Off the Record podcast interview with featuring Sheriff Bianco from Riverside County Sheriff's. He is a distinguished figure in law enforcement. And again, I'm Dom Gamboa. I'm your host and the current president for CRPOA. We are thrilled to have Sheriff Bianco here with us, along with my co-host, Board of Directors Jeff Knockett. A special welcome to all our CRPOA members joining us online today. We look forward to a meaningful discussion with the sheriff and hearing about his experiences and perspectives and that he brings to this conversation. Sir, thank you for being here. And to all our participants, let's begin with some insightful dialogue. Sheriff, your career in law enforcement spans over 30 years, with many pivotal and moments shaping your leadership style. Could you share some of those qualities that you learned throughout the years that developed your leadership style?
Certainly. It's definitely a great question, and it's really something, especially lately, where I'm instructing in leadership classes and giving talks about leadership the last couple of years. I got to be honest with you and tell you that it's not something that I've ever thought about. I think that it was my leadership style and what I think I bring to the table is probably, and this is all hindsight now, but it was something, it was how I was raised. It was my upbringing with my dad and what I was taught and how I treated other people and really watching him in his business world, in his workforce environment, and some of the things that happened there and just really how I was raised. And then coming into law enforcement, I mean, we're all subjected to leadership classes, and we're all, you know, this book and do this. I don't want to say this to be like I'm anything better than anyone else, or I don't want anyone to assume, you know, that I'm illiterate or you know, something else, that I just disregard things. But not for lack of trying. I tried to attend many leadership classes throughout my career, and I was always denied. And I've never read a book about leadership. I've certainly, you know, seen things and heard things and listened to other conversations about leadership styles and leadership abilities and things like that. So I know at least a general idea that there are certain types of leaders. And I couldn't tell you what type I am. I mean, other people have told me what type of leader I am. And many people have told me different things. And I go back to just who I am and how I got to this point. And a real super quick story of my upbringing, of how I got to where I am today, that really highlights what I think about myself and how I talk about myself, because it's not comfortable for me. I'll talk about law enforcement till we're blue in the face, but talk about me it goes against everything that I was raised. I was very young. I don't know if I was 11 or 12, somewhere around there, but I was very talented in baseball, and it was very apparent to the entire community that I was either one of the, if not the best, of the young talent that was in our community. And before a game one day, someone in the stands, and I don't remember who that person was, but I'm sure I knew who they were. They asked me, you know, they're talking about the lineup and everything else, and one of the parents or people watching said, Chad, you know, do you think you're playing today? And I made the comment of, well, if they want to win. And so the game gets to be started, and I'm sitting on the bench. And that is obviously a first for me, because that had never happened in my life. I was always one of the players. I was always one of the best players. And so now I'm extremely upset. I don't remember this, but I was probably emotional, and I was very upset with the coach that I was not playing. And come to find out later, that was my dad's doing. And he heard me say that. And so he went and, there's different things, later on in life, of how that conversation happened. But he may have threatened that coach's physical well-being if that coach allowed me to play. And he told him that I would not be playing that day, and I'd be sitting on the bench. So on the way home, I was extremely vocal. I was upset. We ended up winning. But I said, I was saying how lucky it was and how dumb the coach was. How can I not be playing? And my dad pulled the car over and pulled me out of the car, threw me on the side of the road, and said, have a different attitude by the time you get home, and drove away.
Ooh,
And so
nice.
when I got home, we had this adult conversation, this dad-son learning conversation of why I will never talk like that again. And I don't, that's not how you talk to anyone. And the statement that still sticks in my head, and I told my kids, if you are good at something, everyone is going to know. If you have to tell them that you are good, then you're not good. And that really stuck with me. So from that perspective and talking about myself, it's difficult for me because I don't want to say that I'm a great leader. I don't believe I'm a great leader. I don't think that I'm a great leader, but other people are telling me that. And a lot of people say you just have a natural leadership ability. My academy cadre of instructors, I was never put in charge of the class. I was never put in a leadership role. And afterward, I kind of took it personal in my exit interview, leaving the academy. I graduated at the top of the class, and I asked them, I'm like, look, you never gave me the opportunity I never led the class. And I mean, why did you treat me different the whole way? I was the only student in my academy that wasn't the instructor of the day or the president of the day. And he told me, he said, we knew from day one, we wanted you nowhere near a leadership role. We didn't want you. We already knew you were a leader. And so we didn't not care about you. We wanted you on the sidelines so we could mold the other leaders without your interference. And so, I mean, that struck me as like, oh man, I wonder what it was. And I have no idea what it was, but they said on day one, we knew that you had that leadership ability. So in my career, I made not only mental notes, but I made written notes that I still have today of every supervisor or manager that I had in my career. And on their name, it was the good things I liked about them and the bad things I liked about them. And originally, I think it was I was assigned to a jail, and I didn't really want to be in a jail. And you're in a pod, and there's graveyard in a pod. They're all asleep. So what do? You come up with something to do. And at one point, that's what I did, making notes about all my supervisors, because there were some I liked and some that I didn't. And then as that progressed, and I started thinking, hey, I'm going to promote. In my head, it was like, well, there were a lot of supervisors that I didn't like a lot of things they did. If I'm going to be a supervisor, why would I ever do those things? And so I have a big list of leadership ideals or leadership qualities that I didn't think of them as leadership at the time, but I have a whole lot of things from good supervisors and bad supervisors that I would always do or that I would never do. And I tell people all the time, we can all raise our hand about the best supervisor we've ever had. And we can raise our hand about the worst supervisor we've ever had. And think about that worst one. And would you want to be that supervisor to the people that you're supervising? And the answer is always no. But if we don't have a conscious move toward making sure we do that, it's easy to slip back. And then in my talking with about leadership and about how you lead and how you lead effectively, I know there really is a difference between a manager and a leader. It's easy to manage something. It's not easy to lead something. And I have a very athletic background, and outside of work, I coach high school baseball, or I did at the time. this was several years ago. I wish when I retire, I will be a high school coach. But at the time when I was available to do that, I coached high school cross country, I coached high school track and high school baseball, and I'm good at it, and I have that ability to bring these kids along, and I have 2 CIF baseball rings, and I have 3 CIF cross country rings from coaching, and I tell everyone, if you want to be a leader, you go to a middle school or a high school, and you convince a middle school or high school girl, sometimes even a boy, that they need to run until they puke and then wipe it off their face and run some more, and that be acceptable. And if you can get those kids to do that and have it be fun, you can lead anyone, because that environment is about them growing. It's about them having their different personalities. It's about them interacting with adults. It's about them growing into a young woman or a young man, and from a little girl or a little boy. And you have to be able to identify how you can get each one of those personalities to get to that point where we have to run a certain speed if we're going to win. And individually, how do you convince all those different personalities? I can't just go yell at them and tell them to run. One of them I could. One of them I could say, you're lazy, go run faster, and they would do it all the time. But the others I had to convince. Mm-hmm. And so in a work environment, in a true leadership role, I believe that if I would have went to those leadership classes, or if I would have read one of those leadership books, and if I would have pinned myself into a leadership style, I think I would have pigeonholed myself to say, well, that's just the type of leader I am. And now I know that this type of a personality doesn't respond. It's their fault that they're not responding because they're this personality, when in reality is a true leader, you have to be every single type of leader because you have every single type of personality. So you have to be able to, on the fly, treat someone completely different than 30 seconds later how you're going to treat someone else, depending on their personality. And you actually have to take a personal buy-in into their personalities in their lives to realize who they are, what personality are they, and how are you going to get the best out of them. So I know that was long and detailed, but I don't want to downplay the importance of leadership styles, but I think that sometimes people get pigeonholed because they just say, well, that's my personality, and that's their personality, and they need to be assigned to a different supervisor or that they can get the best out of them. When the reality is if you really want to be a leader, that's a manager. So all you can do is manage the same personalities. Right. But a leader has to be able to manage everyone for that same goal. I mean, we're like, for us, we're 4,100 different employees, and we all want to be at the same place at the end of the day. And how do I make that happen? And I can't tell you, it's not a magic pill. I think that it's not only my childhood and my upbringing, but it's my work experiences and the perception I had of supervisors that I would never want to be. And I remember my dad telling me, I mean, I had a great relationship with my grandpa, but my dad didn't. And he never wanted to be the dad that his dad was. And so I always had that. It was like, well, okay, well, I want to be the type of dad my dad is. And then I took that into work, and it's like, I want to be the type of sergeant that he or she is. And I certainly don't want to be the type of sergeant that he or she is. And that was all because of that upbringing. And then that continued through the rest of my career, really up until today. And there are still people that I meet that it's like, well, I would never act like that. I would never say that. Or, man, I could really benefit from learning from that person. And I think that's what's brought me to this point, leadership wise, not because I think I'm a good leader. It's just that my life has led me to this point.
Having being a reserve officer and having a career in aerospace, big there in the LA area, I've spent a lot of time in leadership courses from a different perspective, not law enforcement, but through the business world. And even though you may not have attended those courses, you learn the lessons. I will tell you that the whole conversation about behavior styles and the need of a leader to literally from one conversation to the next change your behavior to mesh better with the person that you're dealing with is a tremendous lesson, and one that's incredibly difficult to do. Hats off to you for being able to not just be perceptive enough to understand that, but then also to be able to act on it. Not easy. A lot of people spend an entire career studying that and still can't get it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm certainly not perfect. And, I'll take my administration. I have 11 people underneath me in sheriff's administration, and I make mistakes all the time. I mean, you got to make something on the fly, and I do something or I say something, and then I realize later that, oh, crap, that would have worked for Dave, but not for Don. And,
right.
And I messed up. And so then I have to go back and fix it, or then I have to manage that. Or I know that, man, I could have got more out of that had I not approached it that way or directed it that way. Yeah. Because in hindsight, I know that I've got distinct personalities up here that even though we're at this same level, there's still distinct personalities that don't interact the same. And it's a constant thing. I'm certainly not perfect. I mess up all the time.
I love the idea of the notes that you took of your supervisors. That's absolutely a fantastic idea, and one that I will be sharing with my sons. Young in their careers. That one is going to be a conversation later this evening.
Yeah, good. I did it with mine. I did it with my kids, and they know the same thing. And my youngest boy is a captain in the Army, and he does the same thing. And he tells me, he's like, yeah, I will never do that. I will never say those things. And he's been very successful so far. And he attributes it to that because he knows that he's consciously aware of how he's treating others or making sure that he doesn't do those things he didn't like.
Yeah, and you use a word there, conscious. There's so much, and we see it in law enforcement where people kind of stumble through events and they're literally in an unconscious state. They're not aware of what's happening, and to have the insight in the moment to consciously decide to do something or consciously take an action based on prior experience. That's a tremendously powerful word.
Oh
yeah. Again, hats off. That's the awareness there is really something.
What's interesting is you said the word consciousness. I don't know if you. I did a little research on what that word really means. Con being with, right? Conscious being knowledge. So you're making decisions based on knowledge, based on experience. And Sheriff, I like everything you just said. It was personable. It was based on insights. A couple words came to my mind when you were talking about that. That was coaching. Be it that you were a coach and all that, but you have those abilities from a coach that lead people to success. Mm-hmm. And that's really what a coach does. Is right. They want to see their members become better than they think they could be. And so you definitely have that. I also like it how you took it off of the post curriculum. What is leadership, right? And to me, it's evident that you're a good leader because you have followers, and you probably have followers that you don't know or aware of. Like when we're done with this podcast, you just got at least 600 other new followers. and I just want to support Jeff when he said decisions. In my 33 years of career, the strongest leaders that I saw were always making decisions for the greater good and not for themselves. Mm-hmm. And there are some of the old school San Francisco PD sergeants. There were times where I didn't know that they went to go bat for me, and they did, and they just never said anything.
Yeah.
So I took some of those lessons learned, and I try to have that passed down culture that we should have in law enforcement. Because at the end of the day, it's us that help each other get to this career and get to that. I think I'm going to be a coach when I retire. Environment. So, well, that was a lot of powerful dialogue. Let's see if I can ask you another question in a different way. Sheriff, drawing from your extensive experiences. Which advice would you give to an aspiring law enforcement officer aiming to have a significant impact in their career?
Wow, that's a great question. I think the uh, we're in a career of service,
Mm,
so you have to be grounded. You have to be grounded in what you're doing. You have to be here for the right reasons. I hope no one. I don't know anyone that got into law enforcement to become a millionaire, and if you did, your judgment has to seriously be questioned because it's impossible in this line of work. You can do something else maybe on the side, but
Yeah.
not for law enforcement. It's law enforcement is a career of service where you're serving
mm,
others and you're really what we say here, the motto we have here is service above self. You
mm,
have to place yourself second. And going back to the whole leadership thing, you can't be a successful leader of men and women if you're more important than them. They have to be more important than you are. You have to be able to sacrifice for their benefit or for their betterment. And if
mm,
you're not willing to do that, it can't happen. So along the lines of law enforcement, if you are here for the overtime and you're here for the benefits or you're here for the money, that's the wrong reason, and you may not have a successful career. If you're here to make a difference in the people that you're helping, every single 911 call or every single ped check, and sometimes an arrest, the arrest isn't. Yeah, you may be helping someone that may have it was going to be burglarized if you didn't do that ped check and arrest that person with burglary tools. But you also have to take a look at maybe, or are you placed in this position to stop that person from the whole recidivism thing? It's like
mm,
making the wrong
yeah,
decision. Get out of this, and you can take those opportunities to make everyone else's life better. But it starts with you caring about others more than yourself. And so there has to be a fine balance because for me,
mm,
I know that's what it is. But I also care about my family more than I care about my work. So I never let my family suffer because of my work. They knew shift work is bad. They knew shift work is taxing on a relationship with your wife or your spouse, and certainly with your kids of missing out on things. So we made it a conscious effort to my kids got two of everything. They got
mm,
two birthdays, they got two Christmases, they got two everything. One of them was on the real day, and one of them was the day when I was home. And so they knew that they were better than everybody else because everyone else only got one birthday. And my wife knew that she got two anniversaries. And so we made the best of everything because I wanted to make sure, as much as I love work, I would have worked 24/7 because I absolutely loved being a deputy. I loved what I was doing. I loved the excitement, the adrenaline, that feeling of helping someone, but I had to weigh that against my family. So if you're going to be successful in this, you have to care about the people you're helping. You have to care about the teammates that you've got, your coworkers that their life depends on you and your life depends on them. You
totally.
have to care about your supervisors. You have to care about make your captain look good, you know, more so than you do about yourself. You
Yeah,
spend a little extra time
yeah,
because you know you're going to make your sergeant look good, and you don't want any extra heat coming down on them. And
mm,
so I honestly do believe that if this is a fantastic career.
mm,
I have three boys that wanted no part of it, but my daughter, my youngest, is a deputy, and
oh,
she loves it, and she really is my personality. She enjoys not only the adrenaline part and the excitement part, but she loves helping someone. And no one has to tell her thank you. No one has to pat her
right.
on the back and tell her how great she is. The look on someone's face or the smile or the maybe it is a thank you, that is her driver that makes her want to keep coming back and doing this more. And that really was mine too. So if to be successful in this career, you have to realize,
Mm,
stay off social media. People really do love us. It's only the haters that hate us. The majority of people love us. We know we're in a righteous and virtuous career, and we have to make it that way. We have to show an example of how we're supposed to be, that we're better than everybody else, and that we can be held to a higher standard. And we get past the old notions of, the thin blue line where we cover for our coworkers who are not ethical. We need to get rid of that because those make us look bad. And so if you come into this career, you want to make other people better, you want to do the right thing. If you have that mentality, you can really influence other people to go along with your agenda and with your vision and mission. And we all know it. The ones that have been here for this many years, we're not doing it to get rich. We're doing it because it is an extremely rewarding, personally rewarding career. And if you look at it like that, you just have a different outlook on life in general, and you end up loving this job and could never imagine yourself doing anything different.
That's so true.
Sir, in a way, it's an interesting transition to kind of the next question, which is then talking more specifically about reserves in your agency, and your view towards your reserve corps, how you use reserves. And I'll share with you a little bit of a background on me. I had a good friend who was a LA County Sheriff's deputy, and I went on a ride along with him one night. And in the lobby of the station, they had, you've probably seen it, that poster that is the backlit shot of the alley, and it shows an officer standing there with some scary figures in the background. And the tagline at the bottom is, you wouldn't go in there for $1 million. A cop does it for a lot less. A reserve does it for And I saw that poster, and I was in the recruiter's office literally a week later. That one image just resonated so much with me, and I would venture a guess to a lot of reserves, because obviously we're sure not doing it to get rich. I mean, it's a different dynamic in many ways, although the duties and responsibilities are the same, and the ethical responsibilities are very much the same.
Yeah.
So, transitioning a little bit more to reserves in your agency and your views on how you use them and how they help.
Yeah. So a little bit, much to the dismay of my wife, she knows that when I leave here, I will be a reserve, and I will come back and do it for free. And I don't care how old I am. I will be in a black and white, and I will be out there doing those, the patrol function or whatever other function, they'll allow me to do inside this organization. If we move, it'll be at another organization, but I know I will do it. And so my introduction to a reserve was, I was a young patrol deputy. I'd already done a couple of years in corrections, and now I'm a young patrol deputy. And every so often, there's some new deputy that's here working, and he's an older guy, and I'd never seen him before, and nobody, everybody knows him, and everybody's good with him, and he's just coming in here, and I'm like, why is he coming here all the time? He's not working. We don't have overtime posted. And what station does he work at? And then someone says he's a reserve. And I'm like, well, what is a reserve? And it's like, well, he's doing this shit for free. And he's got a real job, and he was actually a doctor, and he was coming and doing this for free on his own time. And that really stuck with me, because internally I'm like, why would you do this for free? Why would we not pay him? And I didn't even know what a reserve was. So that's how I learned about it. But in that process of learning what a reserve program was and what a reserve deputy was, the amount of respect that I had for that person, and then learning that there were others, it was like, oh my gosh. This is that poster. It's like, there are some people that wouldn't do it for $1 million. I'm doing it for paycheck to paycheck, but man, I wouldn't do that for free. There's no way I would come do this for free. And now that I'm 30 years into it, you're darn right I do it for free. I get it. I know what they were thinking then, because there was something in them. And when you saw that, or you heard that, or you experienced that, there was a draw there. And if you always wanted to do it, and then you went and you're able to do it, more power to you. I mean, I have far more respect for a reserve than someone that's getting paid, because you are doing the same job for free. I mean, no one's going to work and being a doctor for free. No one's going to work working on somebody's car for free. You get paid for everything. And there's something about this profession and something about us in our soul that wants us and forces us to be able to do this to a point where we'll do it for free. We'll not only put our life in jeopardy, we'll do it without getting paid to do it. Yeah. And so that was how I learned about them. So the immediate amount of respect I had for reserves and our reserve program, I mean, it was through the roof. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. And I learned that we had a lot throughout the department. And then as my career progressed, and we unfortunately ended up with a sheriff that, in hindsight, I don't even really think he liked law enforcement in general. But he certainly didn't like our reserves. And so our reserve program went down to almost zero. Mm-hmm. And it was the ones that stayed were the ones that were so adamant about doing this that they were doing everything on their own, and they were maintaining their training, and the expectations that were being placed upon them that sometimes seemed unreasonable. They were doing it because this is something that they wanted. So when I took over as the sheriff and then had to look at our completely almost non-existent reserve program, I mean, it had to be a complete direction change of not only how do we get these back, but how are we going to recruit others? Mm-hmm. And then unfortunately for me, then we went through COVID, and we went through political unrest, and we went through the anti-law enforcement. So a lot of things have changed most recently about the people that may have those thoughts. There was no longer that ability. We weren't taking volunteers. Our volunteers kind of went away because of the restrictions placed on them by COVID and by testing and whether sworn were exempt and other people weren't, and those types of things. But over the last several years, we've placed a major emphasis on our recruiting program to not only for the new hires, but we recruit the reserves because I seriously was affected by watching a reserve work who was working hard for free. And it was like, how can that guy work that hard for free and I'm getting paid and not work harder? So they were role models. They were someone that a new deputy could look up to that we don't have that in our organization anymore because all of those people were forced to leave. And we've brought some of them back. Some of them are very happy to get back, and we've brought some new ones back. But it's a slow process, and it's not something that we can change overnight.
Yeah, especially these days. And you said it right. I mean, it's unfortunate. The political, not political, the social attitude towards policing in general. And that's got to be affecting you across the board with recruitment full time. It certainly makes reserve recruitment more difficult, which actually is an interesting transition. You may know we have our CRPUA sponsors an annual reserve training conference, which we have coming up in August. And we actually do have at least one other organization that is going to do a recruiting table at the event. I'd open up that opportunity for your recruitment guys to come out and have an audience of reserve officers that can help get the word out and share your positive attitude towards reserve programs. We all know that from agency to agency it's different, right? Like you just said, right? We had one sheriff that kind of killed it, and then you come along and you're trying to regrow it. In my 32 years with LAPD, I'd actually seen our reserve program go through highs and lows, and we almost killed the program 3 times in my career. Yeah. Only to have a new leader come in or someone go, "Holy crap, what are we doing?" Right? This is silly. Let's put some energy here. put a
Yeah.
new leader in, and all of a sudden life gets good again.
Right. And you have to look at it, and you have to realize that there's not a downside. There's if you want to, I know some of the naysayers will say they're not trained as well. Well, that's not necessarily
Not true.
true.
Not true.
And you can overcome that training aspect of it. There's no different liability. There's it's nothing but a force multiplier. There's not one agency out there that's going to say, I don't need more warm bodies out in a patrol car or helping doing something. We all need more people. And so to have a pool of people that are available to you that don't affect your budget, I mean, there's so many different things, but it isn't just about money. It's just not about something free. It's about mentorship. It's about leadership. It's about, honestly, for me, that was a huge driver. I'm not going to say that I didn't work hard. I was a hard worker anyway, but I couldn't let somebody work harder than me for free. And so that was a development thing for me as a young deputy wanting to make myself better. Is, man, that's a good role model right there. And I know he's been doing it for a long time. And so I would ask them questions, and they may not have known the answer, but most of the time they did. And just that life experience part of it worked for me, and I know it worked for other people that were in the station too. And there really is not a downside. It is nothing but a win for any organization to have not only an enormous volunteer corps, but that section of volunteers as reserves is huge. It's huge because we have reserves that are in the private sector that are still managing their jobs and the things that they're doing, that choose to do this. And then we also have reserves that are retired, and those that just weren't ready to get out of it. They wanted to stay involved. And those people can seriously be taken advantage of for their knowledge and their vast working knowledge and organizational history base that you may not have. And why would you shun away from that, or why would you look to eliminating them when that is nothing but help for you? And I think it's super important that we build, that everyone build these ranks of our volunteers and our reserves, because there are so many different aspects that contribute to the success of your organization that you just don't realize that you get from one person.
Yeah. And looking at your bio, you're on the board of several sheriff's associations and whatnot. Does the subject of reserve ever come up in those conversations? I mean, is this something that's being talked about at the leadership levels?
It is. I can't tell you that it's something that we routinely talk about, but
sure, of course.
Over the last 5 years, there's been numerous conversations about reserve programs, and even people, even sheriffs in the state, of starting a reserve program, or how do you recruit? Do you guys have one, and how do you recruit for them? And what do you do with your employees? Do you automatically? And then when you bring them back, what do you allow them to do, and what do you stop them from doing? So for the most part, I think the majority of agencies have some type of program in place. They may run them a little bit different, but we certainly all do. I've never heard anybody say, I don't want a reserve program, or that's a bad program, you shouldn't do that, and it's a liability. That never happens. It's sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind, where someone might not think about it because there's other pressing things.
Sure.
But the majority of conversations I have had are along the same lines of me, is, man, we need to take advantage of this on all fronts. It's added labor, it's added people, it's no cost to you. It's a benefit to everybody. And then you also have an additional citizen that is a vocal proponent of you in their workforce and in their neighborhood, because they know them as something else, and they may not know that they're law enforcement on the side, and they're out there spreading your message. So it's it honestly is a must for every organization, and it should be a very, very robust program.
Yeah, and that's very true. That whole being the mouthpiece kind of thing, I experienced hundreds of times where people generally knew in my work environment that I was a reserve officer at the time, and they would come to me and ask, hey, this is what I'm hearing. What's the other side of this argument, or what's the other side of this event, or how does this work? Because most people, regardless of whether or not they had civics classes in school, which I don't think we even teach anymore, they don't really understand the basic fundamentals of law enforcement, the concepts of our entire justice system is based on taking away your freedom, not taking your money. It's taking your freedom. That's the true power of us as human beings. And when you do wrong, we're gonna take away that freedom for a while.
Yeah.
And that's a huge deal, and people don't understand that. And so when you can have that conversation with them, all of a sudden now you've got several other people that are much more aware of how things really work in the world.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Sheriff, a lot of good points that you made, and a lot of good supporting conversation by Jeff. I just want to reassure you this, that CRPOA's position is to look at how we can modernize reserve programs. So we're taking that lead on that, working with hosts. And, we want to be that support system for every agency out there. I'm trying to build an inventory of programs, an inventory of policies, and then just kind of look at, the training standards versus the hiring standards, and then certainly the expectations of all different levels of reserve. So I can't wait to sit down with you and share some of the learned from the years. We need to be a support system for every law enforcement agency in the nation, not just California.
Yeah, absolutely.
So reassure that. Yeah. And our RPOC conference, I think we're at 47 years now, or Jeff,
46.
46 years of providing AOT training, and it was been done long before I was alive.
I can't say the same thing, Dom.
But I'm excited, and I much like you, sir. I want to lead that way too.
Good.
Do what's right. So.
Yeah.
Right.
It's fun to it's that choice of citizen thing that we were talking about. Here I am at 63, having just retired from LA, and I wanted to comment there that, and I'm not sure if you do this, but you go through the standard retirement process. There's just no money at the end of it, and but on the outbrief on the checklist is one of the questions is, have you ever thought about being a reserve officer? Right before we let you go, there's this other avenue over here. So it's actually an interesting way to kind of keep the hooks in on some people that otherwise might just walk away entirely.
Yeah.
But now having then transitioned to another agency and having had to go through the complete background and physical and psych evals and the whole process, the 6 months of driving down, I drove over 1,000 miles for all of the appointments. Because I live in a small town up in Oakhurst, up near Yosemite, but my headquarters is down in the Central Valley, down in Madeira, and it's an hour drive both ways, and so I drove over 1,000 miles just to go through the onboarding process, and it was kind of nuts. But here I am at 63, and a couple of weeks ago I was being hauled out of a river by a helicopter for training. You don't get that crap anywhere else.
That's very true.
Good stuff. It's a lot of fun in addition to just being doing the right thing for the communities.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Hey, Dom, do we want to talk a little bit more about RPOC? Sheriff, I'm not sure if you how familiar you are with it. We can give you a little bit of background on that, and then I think there's a real question here of how can CRPOA help you either directly in your community, in your recruiting efforts for reserves, or helping whoever you have in charge of the reserve program maybe understand how to structure it, or help fill in any gaps. Not that you guys don't don't have what you need. But is there beyond this interview, is there a relationship that would be beneficial to us that we could help you, and certainly you're helping us right now just with this interview and your time.
Absolutely. There's historically in law enforcement, we got ourselves into positions of trouble because of silos, and this kind of is the same thing. So if we're not working together, and if we're not working for the same mission, the same goals of expanding and then utilizing, then we're both just kind of spinning our wheels. So if I'm not utilizing your expertise and effort, and you're not coming to me or others to do the same, then we're kind of just isolated and we have a limited reach. If we combine those efforts, if we combine that messaging, if we combine that lobbying for council members and even legislators and things like that, and then the really just the outreach of letting people know, there are tons of people that have absolutely no idea that what a reserve is or that they exist.
Exactly.
And I think that there are many, many people out there. You have conversations all the time of, I really wanted to be a cop, but it didn't work out, and I got into doing this, and then I got too far along, and then I got too old, and I couldn't change careers. Well, actually, there is a way you can still get that mental benefit, and you can still accomplish those goals, and they had no idea. So there's always room for the active and the reserve to combine efforts with the two organizations to bring those people in. So now you have more in the association, we have more in our work environment, and we work to make all of those things different. I mean, not that I would want to share, but I mean, in a big vision, I mean, we send deputies to work for other places all the time. We could send reserves to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's, you're at the whim of the department, and you're still, if you're talking about sworn reserve officers, there's no different. And Coronas can come to me, or I can send them to Corona and Murrieta. All of those things benefit everybody. Yeah. And I think that if without both of us knowing each other and working for the same goal, we wouldn't be as productive.
Yeah. And actually, an interesting point, RPOC is available to everyone. It's not just reserves. So there's, Don, what is it, 22 or 24 hours of post-credit?
24 hours of advanced officer training.
Yeah.
Post-certified.
Yeah. We advertise throughout the organization if somebody needs to get some post time in. There's a 4 days coming up of a way to do that.
Very good.
Yeah.
And Sheriff, this year we've got some high flyers, some pretty well-known instructors coming to teach more. This year is more of like investigative skills, from the most current science-based interviewing to reading micro expressions. There's a professor coming that did the study on how to read micro expressions in the face, and what he claims is that of the 7 universal expressions, 3 of them lead to violence, and he's done that study. And he's done it on active shooters. So, and the guy's written over 111 peer-reviewed papers.
Well, I'll make sure I never come face to face with him.
I know, when I do talk to him, I'm like this. So, hey, Sheriff, your time is important. I know a lot of great content for our members. A lot of stuff needed to hear from you, and hear from us as well. But I just want to start ending our conversation with this. Your leadership and dedication to community service serves as a beacon of inspiration to all of us. And for those aiming to advance their careers and create a meaningful impact in law enforcement, your wealth of experience is invaluable. I just want to leave you with that, and sincerely, both Jeff and I. Separately, this is the time where I extend a warm welcome to all law enforcement professionals and enthusiasts to join us at the upcoming RPOC conference, featuring high-end training and instructors. And it's at the Marriott Los Angeles Burbank Hotel, right across from the Bob Hope Airport. And that's again in August 7th through the 10th. Lastly, our thoughtfully selected courses offer practical insights that will transform your approach to law enforcement duties. Seize this opportunity to boost your skills, network with peers, and help shape the future of law enforcement. My recommendation is to register now. Lastly, we are really hoping we can have Sheriff Bianco as our distinguished guest, joining other esteemed presenters. So register today. Sheriff, on behalf of CRPOA, thank you for your time. And Jeff Noggett, do you have any other
Sir,
final
it's been a
thoughts?
pleasure. A genuine, just a genuine down to earth person. Thank you very much. Just a pleasure to talk with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for reaching out, getting me on, allowing me to talk and talk with you guys. And it's good stuff, very good stuff. And I appreciate it.